Okay, guys, today we are going to talk about coordinate grids and coordinate points. Now, first of all, you've all seen a coordinate grid before. You've seen this kind of design where they have a side and they have a bottom and they go up at different units. So we'll say 5, 10, 20 and so on, and we'll say 5, 10, 15, 20 and 25. Now this is called a coordinate grid. This is a grid where we are going to put coordinates. So we have different parts of the grid. First part of the grid you have is the title. You see that I don't have a title up here. So I'm going to let's put Candy in 5th grade. So that's the title of my grid. It's going to be Candy in 5th grade. And then you have to title the side of your grid, and you have to title the bottom of your grid. Now you hear me saying side and bottom. Now you're never going to really hear that in real life. The side and the bottom of the grid have names as well. They are called axes. There's an x-axis and there's a y-axis. The bottom line, or the bottom of your grid, is your x-axis, and the sideline is your y-axis. And so you're going to hear me from now on referring to them as an x-axis and a y-axis. So now that I have the title of my graph, I need to title the side, my y-axis, and I need to title my x-axis as well. So for my x-axis, we'll title that students, and we'll title the y-axis amount of candy. So now I have a title to my graph, I have a label on my y-axis, and I have a label on my x-axis. So now I can plot some points. Now when we're plotting points on the graph, you can't just put a point wherever you want. It's a graph that shows you information. And so what you have to do is you always have, so let's do this. Let's say that here are coordinate points. Let's go this way. Here are coordinate points. This is what a coordinate point will look like. You have a parentheses and you have one number, comma, and another number. Now now that would need to go somewhere on this chart. And let me change the number so that I can actually put this on the chart here in a minute. Let's do 10 and 5. So there are my coordinate points. Now, this is some information that you may have to put on your coordinate grid. How would you put it on your coordinate grid? Well, you have to look at this coordinate points. The first number in your parentheses represents the number that you have to go over on your x-axis. And the second number in your coordinate points represents the number that you have to go up on your y-axis. Now you may think, well, how am I ever going to remember which one is the x and which one is the y? Well, there's several ways you can remember which one to do first. You know you always do your x first because the letter x comes before the letter y in the alphabet. The other reason you can remember to always plot your x first is because we go across and then we go up when we are plotting points. And so you can think of it like an airplane. An airplane has to go down the runway before it can go up into the air. And so when we're plotting points, we have to do the exact same thing. So let me plot the points of 10, 5, which on my x-axis, I'll go over to the 10, and then on my y-axis, I'll go up to the 5, and that's where I put a point. You see, I didn't put a point right here and a point right here. That's not how coordinate points work. Those coordinate points that I gave you a second ago that are there on the side, those are the points where you are going to put one piece of information. And so I went over 10 and put 5, which means that 10 of my students had 5 pieces of candy. So that's how I did that coordinate grid. So let's look at another one. Let me draw another coordinate grid. Let's do 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll just keep it easy. And on the side, let's do 1, 2, 3, 4. And so I gave you the points. Let's say I gave you the points 2, 3. And I asked you to plot the points 2, 3. Well, we know the bottom line again is the x-axis. And we know the sideline again is the y-axis. And when we're looking at our coordinate points, we always remember the first number represents the x-axis and the second number represents the y-axis. Because x comes before y, and you have to go down the runway before you can fly. So 2, 3. I go over 2, and then I go up 3, and that's where I put the point. Now sometimes you'll be given a coordinate grid where there will already be points graphed out for you on the grid, and you're going to have to identify the coordinates of those points. So if I have a coordinate grid that looks like this, and let's say I have point A right here, I have point B right here, I have point C right here, and I have point D right here. And I want to find the coordinates of all of those points. Well, let's start with point A. I'm going to put my parentheses because I know that I'm going to be filling it in. I remember that my first number represents my x-axis and my second number represents my y-axis. I remember that my x-axis goes across and my y-axis goes up because I have to I have to go down the runway before I fly, so I have to go across before I can go up. So for A, I go across first, so I go 2, 4, 6, there I went across. So that's my across. And then I go up from the 6, 2, 4, and I see that it's lined up with the 4. So my coordinates are 6, 4. Now when I find the coordinates of B, I'm going to do the same thing. I go over till I get to B, which is 12. And I go up, which is 10. And then for coordinate C, I'm going to do the same thing. Now C is a little different. We haven't seen one like C before. Now how far does C go over? It doesn't go over at all. It's on the starting point. So what number is the first number? It's 0. So C does not go over at all. And then how much does C go up? It does not go up at all either. So your coordinates for C would be 0, 0. And then finally, we have point D. And this is the part where people make the biggest mistakes, are when a coordinate point lies on the x-axis or lies on the y-axis. They get the numbers mixed up. So remember that the first number we're going to be filling in is the x, and the second one is the y. So for the x, I got to see how many did I go over to get to this D. Well, I went over 8. And then I got to see how many did I go up to get to the D. Well, I didn't go up any. I'm on the x-axis. I didn't go up at all. So what number represents none? The number 0. So we got to remember that a coordinate grid has two different axes. It has the x-axis, which is on the bottom, and it goes across. And it has the y-axis, which is on the side, and it goes up and down. When we are doing a coordinate point, we have the coordinate points in parentheses. And that first number of the coordinate points always represents how far we go over on the x-axis. And the second number on the coordinate grid in the coordinate points is how far we go up on the y-axis. And it's just that easy when we're plotting points as well.